Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. A very warm welcome wherever you are, whether it's morning, noon, or night around the world. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd just like to say thank you to the sponsors for today's event. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. And I'd also like to remind you that you can use the chat room at the bottom of your screen to interact with the other attendees and also with the panelists. And the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen is where we ask you to post questions. Given the amount of content in this session, we will likely leave the questions till the end. Okay, so let's move on. We formed Women in Cotton to increase the gender diversity in the ICA and to promote networking and support women in the global cotton industry. Our session is entitled, If Not Now, When? And coming on the back of the previous panel session where they talked about the effects of COVID and what it's done as far as the risks and problems it's created for all of us, they also spoke about the opportunity, and we're also talking about the opportunity that this pandemic provides for the Women in Cotton Initiative and gender diversity within the cotton industry. As a group, Women in Cotton have achieved some of our targets rather quickly. We were aiming to have 100 members of our LinkedIn group by October 2020, but I'm very happy to say that we now have 240 members. And since we opened up to men, our Cotton Champions for Change, in August this year, we now have 71% female participants and 29% male participants, and we're very happy with those numbers, and they continue to grow. We also have 2 women on the ICA board, and we're working to nominate women to various committees as positions become available. So we're here to increase diversity, particularly in leadership positions. In preparation for this panel session, we asked a question to the global industry: if not now, when? And here is what you had to say.
Wherever we look, whatever we read, it seems like the world of work as we once knew it is set to change. So to me, there has never been a more opportune moment to implement that change. We need to capitalize on disruption and use the work of Women in Cotton to push those ideas forward and change the industry for the better.
Women work every bit as hard as men do in the fields and factories, and we need to ensure they're paid equal wages, not 50% less. If not now, when? And by leveling the playing field and empowering women, it will improve the lives of millions of families around the world. So if we don't take steps to make sure that happens right now, when?
I have no idea what and how much Women in Cotton will achieve in the future, but I'm pretty sure that if we start now, we can definitely achieve much more than we start later.
I grew up in a home with a single mother and 3 sisters. I have seen firsthand what success is possible by women in the business world. As a matter of fact, my first boss at Louis Dreyfus was a woman, and I'm very grateful for the leadership and mentorship that she gave me in my career. We have seen women achieve great leadership roles around the world, whether in government or in business, and I believe that the cotton industry is now ready to accept women in leadership roles so that we all may advance together.
So why is diversity more important today than ever? It's because innovation is going to be needed for us to combat this pandemic. We're going to need to create the workplace of our future. An inclusive environment is where innovation is born. And this is the type of environment we're going to need to develop the strategies for a more promising and sustainable cotton industry.
We need to attract those young people to an industry which has stagnated somewhat, I feel, and we need to be an equal opportunity industry as well. And that means giving the same opportunity to women as we give to men. We need both because we need the best of the best.
The Liverpool Cotton Association, which precedes the International Cotton Association, was founded in 1841. That's 179 years. I think we've waited long enough. Let's get on with this change. So I think we can all agree that now is the time for change, particularly as COVID has disrupted the workplace and created the impetus for change. There is some real energy and a real vitality in wanting to change and improve diversity in the cotton workforce. And more women in leadership roles will allow this to happen. We're talking about capitalizing on disruption, talking about equal pay and improving the lives of all families. We need to start now and to use innovation to create our new workplace to attract young women and men so that we can have the best of the best going forward. Just before I introduce our wonderful panel for today, we do have several polls throughout this session, and the first one we'll show now, just so you can have a little bit more participation. And the poll is about has your workload increased throughout the pandemic? If you can please tick on that and submit, and we'll share the results of the poll at the end of the session. The background slide is just showing the change between the membership of our LinkedIn group. And while you're submitting the poll, I'll also mention that we do have a 6 weekly Chats for Change that we have used the online platforms for. And it has been a wonderful opportunity to reach more people online than we would have done face-to-face. So the results of the poll, we actually have them on the screen now. 72% have said yes, that their workload has increased through the pandemic, and 28% have said no. I don't know who would have said no, to be honest, but there we go. All right, I think I'm driving the screen now. Here we go. So the key message is capitalizing on disruption, equal pay, improving the lives of families, starting now, not later. Innovation is needed to create our new workplace and to attract the next generation. Now, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our panel today. Amy Jackson is a Director of Membership for Better Cotton Initiative. And as part of the executive group at BCI, Amy contributes to shaping and delivering the organization's strategy to transform the cotton sector for a more sustainable future. Amy is responsible for developing the strategy for the membership team, overseeing membership recruitment and engagement, and the integrity of the BCI chain of custody. Amy has strong experience in multi-stakeholder engagement and membership development, having held similar positions at the Ethical Trading Initiative, the Marine Stewardship Council, and the ICA Alliance, where she also led global consultations to develop the ICA Credibility Principles and the Good Claims Practice Guide. Welcome, Amy. Camille Cluzel. Camille is a cotton trader with Louis Dreyfus Company. She is a French national and she holds a master's degree in international affairs and finance from Paris Dauphine University. In 2014, Camille joined Louis Dreyfus, and in the 6 years which followed, she worked her way through various departments and countries, eventually taking responsibility for the physical flow between the US and Asia, notably China and Vietnam. Camille was living in Singapore up until earlier this year, but due to COVID, she's now working from Geneva. Welcome, Camille. Bill Ballandin joined the cotton business in 1996 as a trainee in Rowley Brothers & Coney in Liverpool. After spending a number of years in Liverpool and a year living in Abidjan, he moved in 2001 to join the SEAM to build the international cotton trading platform. In 2007, Bill joined Louis Dreyfus Company as a trader in Geneva. He then spent the years 2008 to 2014 managing LDC's cotton business in India and China, living in both Guoguan and also in Beijing, and eventually managing the Asia region out of Beijing. In 2014, Bill once again moved to Geneva and managed the European and Black Sea regions, China, Singapore, and Australia for LDC. At the end of 2017, Bill left LDC to start his own company called Dragon Tree to focus on online auctions for commodities. Kim Hanna is a founding partner and director of Transglobal Inspections, a leading international inspection company specializing in raw cotton. Kim entered the cotton business over 3 decades ago as a secretary to Edward T. Roberts & Sons. With the support of her husband and having had one of the best mentors in the cotton industry, the late Mr. Frank Wakefield, Kim managed to juggle raising 5 children while learning the cotton industry from the ground up. Developing strong relationships along the way, Kim has cultivated the trust and respect of her associates and other industry professionals. She's an advisor to the TCA, the WCSA, and ACSA Foreign Affairs Committees. She's an associate director of the ICA and a participant in the Controllers Working Group. Kim is currently working from her Florida office. We're very, very lucky to have the depth of experience and knowledge in the panel today. And we're looking forward to this conversation, as I hope you all are. So please don't forget to participate using the chat or the Q&A button. All right, let's move things along to the first question. I'm going to start with you, Kim, as my co-conspirator and fellow female on the ICA board. We have seen that through this pandemic, women in political leadership have managed the pandemic differently. Do you see this as there's a strength in female leadership, and what is the main difference in the leadership styles of women?
Well, thank you, Eimear, and it's a pleasure to be included on the panel today. You know, although women make up just 7% of the global heads of states, the evidence is in, at least for the first wave of COVID, that most nations with female leaders suffered far less death rates than nations led by men. For comparison, we can take United States and Brazil, who are currently suffering the highest death tolls in the world. Both countries have male presidents with very bold leadership styles. Both of these men played down the pandemic while encouraging to keep their economies open. Now, that doesn't mean that women are any better leaders than men or vice versa, but it is worth taking a look at why the female leaders of, say, Germany, New Zealand, Taiwan, Bangladesh, all excelled at controlling the virus. So I'll say that the studies show that women are more likely to cultivate a diverse set of advisors, and they listen. So a variety of input really help them to make some better informed decisions. Women also communicate differently than men. Now, these women leaders were very transparent about the seriousness of the deadly virus. However, they communicated to their citizens with empathy and a nurturing spirit. And in doing so, they were able to motivate their citizens to work together to combat the virus. The people were willing to even sacrifice their own liberties to protect the health and lives of their fellow citizens. So generally speaking, women are more adverse to risk. And we did see that these women leaders made early calls to shut down their countries. But the choice facing all leaders this past spring wasn't between more or less risk. It was really a trade-off. It was a trade-off between economic loss or loss of life. And these female leaders took less risk with human lives. So unfortunately, the pandemic isn't over yet, and we really do have a lot to learn. But I'm wondering if perhaps when we come out the other side, if we find that our perception of strong leadership hasn't somewhat changed.
Really good comments, Kim. And I'd also think that it has allowed for diversity of leadership to be seen, and things being done differently is not necessarily a negative. obviously you don't want to solve gender bias by being even more biased, because obviously there are numbers and statistics that should be looked at too. But yeah, I definitely think it's given room for a different style of leadership to be known. COVID, it's thrust change upon us in our lives and work and at home. We've evolved to include technology, and particularly online platforms such as this will now serve as our new and arguably our largest mode of communication. So Camille, do you believe that this technology has allowed a more even playing field, a greater access for women to be more visibly present and heard?
Yes, absolutely. I believe technologies are not only helping to level the playing field, but they're also helping women to stay present and visible in the world of work. So before I elaborate a little bit further, I want to say that clearly not everyone is in a position to leverage from technology, and particularly in the cotton industry, where in some places it physically is not possible to work from home, for instance. So with that in mind, these days, thanks to technology, we've been talking about communication. I think that communication right now is not a conversation over a desk. It's, at least in our case here at LDC, it's now a scrollable chat room with 10 of your colleagues, complete with a history, a search function, and it helps everyone to stay in touch and communicate better. So when considering how technology is helping gender diversity, I think it's important to look at it from the concept of work-life integration. On a historical basis, it's something that I feel women have struggled with more than men. Many studies suggest that career paths start to fork, particularly in the transition that women have to make between pregnancy, maternity leave, and eventually return to work. So in that subject, I'd like to refer to a recent study done by the World Economic Forum, where they're reporting that since the pandemic began, men are providing at least 5 hours a day of childcare, which is up 15% since before the pandemic. If this report is accurate, then I think that the new paradigm of work created by lockdowns has created a deeper understanding and awareness of the type of regime which used to operate in for women with more struggles. So for that reason, and in my humble opinion, we see, I think, an amazing opportunity and an opening for discussion that most people didn't feel comfortable having before, with a new level of respect for flexibility and understanding of perceived needs, both for men and women. So to me, this is a fantastic opportunity that needs to be used.
Yeah, and great statistics. It's great to see that there's an improvement in men sharing the workload as well at home, because obviously it's affecting both genders in the workplace and at home. Bill, do you think that our new virtual workplace can further the cause of diversity, or do you think that there's potentially a downside also?
Thanks, Eimear. No, it can definitely further the cause. I mean, the existence of a virtual workplace goes hand in hand with greater flexibility, and therefore, building on what Camille said, there is an opportunity there. And I think particularly in many households where perhaps the woman was taking the lion's share of childcare arrangements, men have had to see now firsthand just how difficult that is to juggle, and I think that that's a really good thing. But it's not without a risk, because there was, in fact, a UN survey on women that was done to show that pre-pandemic, women were 3 times more likely to take on unpaid work in the home, and that very likely has increased during the pandemic. And I'm sure some of that had to do with the fact that many schools were closed, and therefore were reverting perhaps to more traditional roles. But I'm optimistic that many men who have found themselves working from home and working remotely will now have seen firsthand just how hard that is, and how hard it is to juggle, and how hard you have to work at trying to manage a home and a career. So I feel very optimistic that this has perhaps opened the eyes of many men in the industry, and will hopefully allow for a slightly more empathetic approach to that in the future. So I think it's a really good thing, actually, and I think there will be a great opportunity from here.
Yeah, certainly the gender norms are having to change pretty much due to just the sheer workload of being in lockdown and being at home and having to juggle both work, school, etc. Amy, I know you've been working remotely for many months now too, but you've also been homeschooling. Have you had to change the way that you manage your work-life balance? And what have you learned about probably your tolerance levels around that?
Thanks, Eimear, and hi. Thanks for having me on the panel. I think probably the main thing I've learned is that I'm better at managing a multi-stakeholder membership of thousands of companies in several countries around the world than I am at teaching a grade 5 curriculum to a single student. But it really does make you pause and reflect on the value of teachers. So if any of you know or are in touch with any of them, thank you. But in terms of my own experiences in working from home, at BCI, we were actually really fortunate to already have a culture and a policy of allowing 1 day a week from home, across the board, all of our offices, which meant that we were actually very well set up for when the lockdown happened. And given that we do work across so many different offices, we were very used to group calls and video calls. But that said, we placed a very high value on in-person meetings. So it has been quite a big shift where we used to, meet as a leadership team regularly in person, despite being in different offices. So that's been a challenge. In terms of the work-life balance piece, I certainly, as I'm sure all of you have, struggled a lot with somehow not working more hours. I'm sure many of you have experienced this. You take out the commute, which means you should add hours, but you end up working those hours and more. So there's something to reflect on there. But from a flexibility perspective, the ability to pick up from school and those sorts of things without leaving early has been fantastic. But I think the hardest thing is switching off with the different hours of the day. That is actually one of the nice pieces of childcare responsibilities now that school is back on. Fingers crossed that keeps going. That does force an end to your working day. But for me, also thinking about how the role of teachers and thinking about the role of women leadership, it struck me also about the role of community and how important it is to recognize those interdependencies of all of the actors in the sector. And in our communities. So yes, like everyone else, it's been a fun challenge.
Yeah, boundaries are being redefined all over the world, I think, around this pandemic. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to throw back open to the panel, but we do have our second poll, and we're going to ask you, well, what has technology meant to you during the pandemic? So please participate in this now. Okay, right, that was fairly quick. All right, so again, we asked all of you prior to this event, what did Women in Cotton mean to you and what can it achieve? And we have another video to show you now. So we'll run through with that, please, Tom. Thank you.
Women in Cotton came about, as I remember it, because we were at an ICA board meeting. We looked around the table and then we probably took a look in the mirror. And I think that says it all. We realized that women were not properly represented at the ICA board level. From that moment on, it took on a life of its own. And that discussion eventually came to 2 new board members being elected and Women in Cotton being formed. I think it's an incredibly important initiative. The ICA does not have proper representation from women, and it's growing, and the group is incredibly dynamic. I feel very good about what Women in Cotton has achieved so far, and I hope that they go on to achieve even better and brighter things in the future.
Better communication channels within the industry.
Creation, diversity, and of course progress.
To come together with a diverse group of people
that offers the opportunity to connect with like-minded individuals.
Equal representation, rights and opportunities at all levels.
Through Women in Cotton, I've grown both personally and professionally. I've learned I don't have to be one of the guys to have a voice. I've learned about bias, including my own, holding myself back. I've been able to connect with other women through their experiences and take comfort in not feeling alone. But most importantly, I've learned, like in life itself, men and women are different, and we work differently. And it's for that reason that when we work together, great things can happen.
It means for me, we use the potential of including in our decision making, in our community, in our vision for the future, a huge portion of our population that perhaps have been underrepresented to date. And in the same way that our family make better decisions when everyone is involved, I think the same applies to the cotton community. We can make better, stronger decisions for the future by including our women in cotton.
To me, Women in Cotton means togetherness, inspiration, and progress. It's been a disruptive year for everyone in the industry, and Women in Cotton has provided us with a platform to network, debate, and find mentorship. In essence, Women in Cotton is sowing the seeds of change for the future that will benefit not only the industry, but ourselves and those who come after us.
Women in Cotton is a growing community of people who care about the representation of women in the cotton industry and who truly believe in the benefits of diversity at all business levels.
Hi, I'm Yahya Salim and I'm on the board of ICA. Cotton has always been about men. I think it's time to change. Women in cotton is the need of the moment.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Osewa. I'm a woman in cotton, and what cotton means to me is economic empowerment.
We often see women working hard in cotton chain sectors just like men can do, and women have done more than that.
What does Women in Cotton mean to me? It means hopefully more women arbitrators in the arbitration system, and as head of arbitration, I welcome that. What can women in cotton achieve for the cotton industry? Is there any limit?
To me, Women in Cotton is a great platform to provide inspiring thoughts and caring to every woman in cotton, where we can really help develop the cotton industry and ourselves.
Women in Cotton is being led by a great group of passionate and creative members, and I encourage everyone, men and women, to be more involved and support this forward-thinking initiative.
To me, join this community is for helping those ladies who are self-doubt to build up their confidence.
Women has been a very important part of my career, being agents, customers, suppliers, providers, and most especially my wife, with whom I built the company that we own today. It's more than time for women to take an active role of leadership in the various segments of our industry.
Women in Cotton is a very good initiative. I personally can say that. When my father passed away 46 years ago, my mom took the office and I was educated and prepared by a woman, and I feel very proud of it. In these days, our company has about 70% of our staff. It's with women, and the leadership in the logistical and financial department are also run by a woman. And it's very good. It's more than time to recognize their value and get them more involved in cotton. Make the environment much better as well.
BCI has an opportunity to integrate gender equality as a cornerstone of sustainable cotton. And to accomplish this, we seek to improve the livelihoods of women from the farm to our own organisation and in the sustainable cotton community more broadly. Our gender strategy lays the blueprint to bring those ambitions to fruition.
मेरा नाम आसिया है। मैं पाकिस्तान च रहनी हाँ। पाकिस्तान साडा जरी मुल्क है। मैं बड़ी साफ सुथरी कपाह चुगनी हाँ। मेरी चुगी हुई कपाह फैक्ट्रियां तक पहुँचदी है। मैं भी वूमेन इन कॉटन हाँ।
मेरा नाम आजरा है। मैं लोक सांझ फाउंडेशन की तरबियत याफ्ता वर्कर हाँ ते मैं चुनाई का काम भी करनी है।
मेरा नाम रुबीना, मैं लोक सांझ एफिशन की रजिस्टर्ड फार्मर हाँ। मैं पिछले 2 साल तो लोक सांझ एफिशन के बनाए हुए असूलों पर अमल करके अच्छी कपाह उगानी हाँ। आई एम वूमेन इन कॉटन।
मेरे नज़दीक औरत नाम है जिम्मेदारी दा, मजबूती दा, एहसास व एतमाद दा। औरत एक रहनुमा है और रास्ता भी। दूसरे शोबा है जिंदगी की तरह। ज़राअत और कपास के सैक्टर विच भी औरत दा अगे आना लाजमो मलजूम है और मैनू इस जमन विच उम्मीद की किरण नज़र आ रही है कि औरत कपास के शोबे विच रहनुमा के तौर पर उभरेगी। मेरा नाम इरम शहजादी है ते मैं कपास की चुनाई करनी है।
मैं औरत हाँ कपाह की पहचान हाँ। मेरे वास्ते औरत कपाह दे विच बहादरी की निशानी है। औरत कपाह की सनत नूं ते नस्लां नूं मजबूत बना सकती है। इसलिए जरूरी है औरत के रोल नूं ते मन्निया जाए ते पछाणिया जाए।
The Women in Cotton group provides a tremendous opportunity for women and men to come together and challenge the industry for what has traditionally been a male-dominated environment, particularly at leadership level. We acknowledge that women exist in all aspects of the supply chain, but sadly they're underrepresented in leadership roles. So we come together, we created a conversation and questioned ourselves about why that is the case. And we educate ourselves on how we can do this differently. So please join our conversation and help us to create positive change for our future. Well, I can say that that was an extremely powerful message from the length and breadth of our industry. And we had so many videos that we couldn't include them all, but we will be using them in material for future presentations. On the screen, we have some key messages from that. And I have to say, when I first saw that video, it was actually quite emotional because although a picture tells 1,000 words, a video with words and messages from so many people really reinforced the message that there are women in all sectors of the cotton industry, and they do have the support of the industry to move forward into more leadership positions that can contribute to the future of the industry. So the key messages on the screen, see if I can drive this. Togetherness, caring, connection, time to change. Economic empowerment, progress, no limits. That was one of my favorites. Inspiration, confidence, better decision-making, become involved, an array of hope, strengthen our industry, and my favorite, bravery, because change is not easy, and particularly when you don't identify what is wrong in the first place. So it does take bravery for people to actually step up and make some changes for the good of everybody. Amy, with this positive sentiment, why is it that we have barriers to achieve change? Is it perhaps a deliberate attempt to keep the status quo for some reason?
Thanks, Eimear. I'm so glad you asked this question, because I think when we talk about women empowerment, or we're talking about changing how leadership looks, I've heard from some people that they can feel like initiatives that like this are quite threatening, or they come across as very, you know, man hating or men blaming, and like men have to come down for women to come up. But this is absolutely not the case. What's really important to understand is that, you know, initiatives like this, or none of us are trying to say that men or anyone has created the current power or leadership representation asymmetries on purpose. They haven't set out to do this on purpose and keep women down. There are many reasons that the systems are the way they are today, and you can trace the history of how it's evolved, and you can also see the change happening. And the reason that the change is happening is this is not a zero-sum game. Everyone has something to gain from greater diversity, including men, from seeing more empowerment for women and more diversity in leadership more broadly. And what's important to remember is that actually we're all part of this. This isn't something that only men do. It's women are included in this. We all experience and act on bias. It's almost always unconscious bias. It's not on purpose in our day-to-day lives. And that's okay, bias exists, it's real, but it is important to be aware that it exists, and call ourselves out, call each other out, and take measures to prevent it having a negative influence, because it is real.
Yes, thanks, Amy. And one of the, I mean, we had through our Chats for Change, we did have a whole conversation about bias and different types of bias. And, you know, it's such a powerful thing when you see it in yourself and you recognize it, and then you can't not see it everywhere else too. So once you notice it, you have to, you know, observe, and you can do things to change that. Bill, I'd like to ask you that, just acknowledging that you've been a very strong advocate for the Women in Cotton Initiative, and you did attend our last Chat for Change. And we discussed the many obstacles to women achieving advancements and getting to management level and the same leadership positions as men. When we talk about unconscious bias, it's present in every human being, but can you tell us what you learned about bias and maybe how you recognized it within your own behavior?
Yes, and it's quite an uncomfortable conversation to have, actually, sometimes. But I mean, I am a big proponent of this group, and I can only say, having sort of seen it from the inside, it's without a doubt the most dynamic and passionate group within the ICA today. If ever proof were needed of the positive influence that women can have on our industry, and this group, the Chats for Change, it goes above and beyond anything I've seen so far, and I think it's a great force for change. And I think that change really is necessary. I mean, unconscious bias, you know, obviously by definition is something that you're not necessarily aware of, but I think it's driven by context, and the context of our industry is that we are mostly men, and therefore we're used to walking into rooms full of men, and the ICA board has had women on it, absolutely, and it's great to see we've got women back on the ICA board, but for years, again, it was all men. That context is your unconscious bias, and we looked, as you said, in one of the Chats for Change, at the various types of bias, and one of them is confirmation bias. So in order to diversify, or to better diversify our industry, I think we have to be willing to say it out loud and to talk about the need to have more women in our industry. That's not trying to force the issue at all. It's just trying to say it out loud and acknowledge that it will be better for our industry. It will be better for businesses, all the businesses within the industry. We do work better together. Women often do have a different perspective, and that is a very valid perspective. One of the worst things you can have on a trading floor, or any business for that matter, is groupthink, where you all pat each other on the back and reinforce each other, and you leave the room feeling great because you're all right? But the fact is, you've just reinforced each other's opinions. That's not healthy for any business. So I'm rambling slightly, but I hope I've answered the question. But I think unconscious bias is something that have to leave your comfort zone to recognize. You have to look at the different types that exist, and you have to say it out loud. And if you're in a room recruiting new people into your business, and you realize that your business is dominated by men, maybe someone needs to say out loud, well, why don't we recruit more women? That would be a good starting point.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Excellent point. Certainly from the recruitment point of view, as we've seen in our previous discussions on bias, that's one of the really critical points in an organization where you recognize bias, because you're basically bringing the next generation or the next new person into your company. So it's very, very important. Just a question to the other panelists, if you can give me a one-liner of maybe what you've recognized as your bias, just a quick one-liner, anyone?
Well, you know, I've been a member of this group for some time now, and it wasn't all that long ago that I was talking to a friend of mine who was telling me about his boss. And in my own mind, I'm just envisioning two men talking. And I really had to take myself back when I found out his boss's name was Debbie. I think I was pretty hard on myself.
Oh, the assumption that the boss is always male, correct? Yeah.
Exactly.
Anybody else? Amy?
Maybe not a personal bias, but just reflecting this morning, waiting for the lights to change and waiting to cross when the green man came on. Why isn't it a green person?
True, that's a good point. Camille, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, I think unconscious bias affects us in every area. It doesn't have to be just about gender. And one that I liked in preparation of the previous chat for change that we came across was the anchoring bias, when you already have an idea in mind and then whatever comes up, you're fixated on that. And that's particularly true in trading when a price comes your way, and that's the first and last thing that you're going to be thinking about. So it just touches everything, and obviously including gender.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of education that we can help to implement in our association and in the wider cotton community too, I think. So we've talked about the issues or the obstacles that can prevent women to achieving positions in management equal to men. But so what about tips for changing behavior? The pandemic has thrown us together with no discrimination whatsoever. So once we've identified some of the obstacles, what can we do to facilitate those changes? I'd like to throw back to the panel's view again and just ask Amy, what practical steps do you think as individuals who may or may not be in leadership or management roles, but just as an individual, what do you think we can do?
I think the key thing is to ask yourself that question, right? So no matter where you are in your business, no matter what level, no matter what type of business you have, consider the changes you can make from your position. So if you are in a leadership position, can you mentor a more junior woman or influence organizational policies? Bill mentioned recruitment. If you're in HR, could you promote an approach to gender blind recruitment? That's an experience. If you've never been through it, you can't tell if it's a woman or man looking at a resume or a CV. It's very disorienting. And that's when you become aware of your bias. Things like if you're in events or marketing, can you check your panels to make sure there are no all-male panels? We're very nearly an all-female panel here. Thanks, Bill, for balancing us out. But even in your marketing materials, are you using visuals showing women at the table? If you're in a finance role, could you encourage tracking of the gender pay gap and raise this internally? So I won't go on, but really just reflect where you are and think, what role can you play? And we'll also come back to some more ideas at the end.
Yeah, we'll list out some ideas at the end, but there's certainly lots of very simple things that you can do initially. Camille, you work for a large multinational company. So do you think that having policies in place will help to engender change? And does that also help with the culture of the business to help diversity?
Well, in particular, in big groups, I think you're right to talk about the culture, the company culture. And I think we have to think of it as what forms the behavior at all levels within the organization and encompasses values that contribute to the unique social environment and the ethos of a business and a brand. So it is also unconscious when we talk about the business culture. So now in organization, when talking to people in my organization, it appears that it all started when the change wanted to be implemented in conversation at the highest level of the top management, whether it was influenced by willingness of bank to implement some rules or losing some talents or whatever the reason. It often has to start with the top management. So recognizing that there's a need for more inclusive needs, and then every business will act differently. I suppose that a lot of people will not want to set hard targets because then you can feel like you're boxing yourself in something that will be really hard to navigate. And instead it can be taken in sequences, from questioning the language onto things that Amy has mentioned. And for example, I know that at LDC we've gone through a few different steps, like the creation of a diversity and inclusion committee, the creation of global policy framework, the reviewing of recruitment processes, the training of leaders on unconscious bias, like we were talking about, and inclusive leadership, because you have to be trained on this. If you don't know about it, you don't know how to change this. So these are just intra-company level examples, but across the industry in cotton, we obviously have women in cotton, which is great.
Thanks, me. Yeah, you make some great points there about, if you don't know about it, you don't know about it. So training is really critical in that regard. Kim, I know that through the Chats for Change, you've been working with groups within the US about, trying to get more women involved from your community, and then within the community in general, talking to groups. What can we do to, raise the profile and give some tips on how to improve gender diversity in the workplace?
Well, Ewa, I think within our cotton community, for starters, I would like to take the opportunity to invite everyone that's on the call here today to join the Women in Cotton's LinkedIn group. There's also a Women in Cotton newsletter. Sign up for this newsletter and check out the Women in Cotton chat feature that is in the new ICA app. And all these platforms, you would be able to share information, show your support, network with women and other professionals in the industry. And you can also keep up with the Chat for Change schedule, any other special events that are going to be planned. For those people who are not familiar with the Chats for Change, let me take just a few minutes to tell us a little bit more about what Women in Cotton have been doing. Chats for Change is a virtual diversity discussion and network session. It's been held every 6 weeks this past year via Zoom. Now, up to now, the Chats for Change has been held at noon, say London time, which we've recognized isn't always convenient across the global time zones. So in the future, we're planning to create 2 regional sessions. That way we hope we're going to be able to make it more convenient for people who want to join in. We're excited to see what next year holds, because as soon as the current situation allows, Women in Cotton are planning to host in-person networking events across various cotton cities around the world. We're hoping this will create a platform where ladies who do not otherwise maybe have an opportunity to do so can meet and greet other cotton-related professionals. And yes, we're really excited to say that the ICAC, BCI, and the USDA have all recognized now and expressed an interest in Women in Cotton. And we're really excited and honored to cooperate with these organizations and hopefully many other, that we can have and reach more people to create the stronger impact for women.
Yeah, I think our Chats Change, where we aim to change our world one chat at a time. Yeah, and I think that conversation, the discussion that we've been having has been, it really has resonated with so many people, and having the platform to do it online means that we can do it instantly. Yes, we need to sort out some time zone issues, and we'll do that with regional chats, but it's certainly had an impact on our group. And we've as Yaya said in the video, the time is now. So Bill, what advice would you give to management teams on how to achieve a greater diversity in their team?
Well, I'd say within any organization, the culture is defined by the tone at the top. So I think, you know, management has to recognize that a cultural change is due. But, you know, the easiest way to understand what change is required is to ask women in your business, in your organization, and talk to them. It's going to be no surprise that the women in the organization will be best placed to comment on whether barriers exist, whether, you know, bias exists, whether it's serious or not so serious. You know, we always talk about high potential people within organizations. So every organization will have some high potential women, and if you don't think you have any, then you're not looking hard enough, because they're there. And I think that that ability to recognize that change is a good thing, that's something that can only come from the top. And therefore, if you're not at the top, go and speak to people at the top and ask them about it. But if there's nothing else you do, then talk to women or a woman in your organization and ask her opinion, and ask what she might think could be done, or how you might be able to help. It can be as simple as that, I think.
You're right. It really is an ongoing conversation, isn't it, Bill? I mean, it's not just something we can't just set a policy. We can't just have one training session and we're done. This is an ongoing evolution that we're going to have that'll bring the next generation of really, the next generation doesn't have that gender bias issue that we've grown up with. They just don't. It's not happening these days. So I think having the conversation amongst ourselves, educating ourselves, is going to go a long way to improving the balance. We're going to put a slide up now with just the key points, and if everybody in the audience can just pay attention to these ones and take some notes of what we can do. And as you're reading that, we're going to prepare our last poll, which asks you, what steps will you take this year to increase your contribution to diversity? So take a minute to read the steps and then answer the poll, please. Okay, there's the poll. And we've been quite strong with the word on this. It's which of these steps will you take, not can you take, but will you take before the end of the year? And you can choose multiple choice. You can do all of the above. Hopefully we'll get a lot of all of the above. Might wait a second just to see the results of that poll, because this could be interesting. Ooh. Well, we've got a few front runners, a neck and neck. Support flexible work policies is 71%, talking about it 69%. Interesting that implementing compensation equality is only 36%, but we'll get there. And modeling the right behaviors. I think those, you know, those top three, supporting flexible work practices, right behavior, and talking about it, that's really the first steps to then going on and achieving the other points that are critical. Okay, now we do have a couple of other slides, and we just talk about where you can support the Women in Cotton initiative. So hashtag change for cotton and women in cotton. So when you're on your socials, please use these hashtags to promote this initiative. We'd also like you to join us in our LinkedIn group, Chats for Change, and also the ICA app, which has been a really quick and a very efficient addition to our networking, and also subscribe to our e-newsletter. Now, last year, we actually had a lapel button that we handed out to everybody in the audience for our Champions for Change. We can't do that this year, obviously, but we do have an e-signature, an e-button that you can put onto the bottom of your email sign-off, and it also has a hyperlink to the ICA website where you can find all the information about the Women in Cotton initiative. Ezrin is going to kindly send that out to all of the participants, and please use it going forward on your email signature. We do have one more video to show, but I'm I think I'll just wrap up and thank you now. Thank the ICA for their support for this initiative, for the board, and especially for the communication committee, communication group, Tom, Ezrin, Michael, and Angela. Without them and without their support throughout the year, we just would not be here today. So we are extremely grateful for your patience with us and for your innovation with the technology and helping us out and training us on how to use Zoom, etc. And we look forward to working with you all in the future. I'd like to say goodbye to Michael because he leaves at the end of this week, and we've appreciated your support. Thank you all for taking the time to participate, and let's keep this movement growing, and let's work together to make this change something we all can own and be proud of. I hope you've enjoyed this first day of the ICA Vision 2020. I think it's been informative and thought-provoking, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Our final message is a statement from our industry and from our president.
Women in Cotton is a journey that began about a year ago to raise awareness that women matter in our industry. To me, this is a journey about advocating inclusiveness of women engaged in the entire cotton value chain through promoting openness, equality, and a sense of belonging.
I stand.
I stand with.
I stand.
I stand.
I stand with. I stand
with women in cotton.
Women in Cotton.
With Women in Cotton.
I am a woman in cotton.
I am a woman in cotton.
It is time. It's time that women got more and more involved in our industry. Our industry will be all the richer for it.
This platform was created for the women engaged in a sector to come together, to share, to learn, to mentor, and to grow. This platform lends all of those women a voice and is a place where their opinions are heard. We all know that women are chronically underrepresented in our sector, as is the case in most other sectors. Lack of diversity carries a huge opportunity cost, both for the individual organizations as well as for the entire sector. Numerous studies have shown that diverse teams are, on an average, are more creative, are more innovative, and ultimately a part of or associated with value creation and growth. McKinsey Global Institute estimates that 37% of global GDP is generated by women, while they make up less than 40% of the global workforce. The same institute also estimates the economic opportunity of engaging more women in the global workforce is staggering. It could create up to $12 trillion in additional global GDP. It's really for all of us to come together and collaborate to unlock the full potential of all those women engaged in the entire cotton value chain, and to make our community a more inclusive and a richer place for all of us. Women in Cotton offers a platform for such constructive engagement. More power to Women in Cotton.
Okay, well, we do have a few minutes. I was winding up looking at the time, but I'd just like to cross to the panel and thank them again and just see if anybody has any closing remarks that they would like to add.
What a great video, and just really want to echo Eimear's comments and the support from the ICA team. They've just been incredible and so talented, as you can see from what we've just looked at. Managed not to cry for any of those. The one comment I wanted to, this time I should say, in this viewing, the one thing I wanted to add to what Bill was saying about asking a woman or asking the women in your business is just to remember that that might be an unfamiliar experience for them. You know, I'm always the one going, ask a woman, but on reflection, I'm thinking, you know, if this isn't something that people of any position are used to being asked, they might not be ready with their response, you know? So think about how you can forecast that you are interested in getting more input and interested in hearing from women in your organization, and, you know, create the space maybe for them to talk together before asking for a response. And then, you know, keep asking, and also ensure that the words don't just end there. So think about how you can actually make a plan and put those responses into action, because of course you don't want to say what do you need and then not have any intention of doing anything. So I just was reflecting on that a little bit after the preparation that we did for this, and I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Amy.
Well,
Camille, did you want to say something?
Well, just thanks everyone. As you pointed, Eimear, very well done on the videos. And I do want to encourage everyone to not stop the conversation here and to take it and carry it forward, both on the LinkedIn group and to participate in the chats for change. The more people we have included in those discussions, the further we can go all together. So thank you, Eimear, for chairing it.
Thank you very much. I just noticed, Bill, you've been monitoring the chat room and the Q&As. Is there anything that we need to reply to?
There was one question, Eimear, about positive steps that may be possible to take to better balance representation across the workforce, both within cotton and perhaps wider afield. I wondered if there's any specific remarks. We've had a number of hints along the way. And one of the things that often comes up in my experience is what is the place for positive discrimination, if you like, steps to actively redress an issue or a diversity if an imbalance exists. And I'd be very interested in hearing the panelists' response to that.
Thank you, Bill. Does anybody want to comment? Apart from the tips that we've identified today, and we've identified those similarly actually 12 months ago. And I think one of the most important things that we've noticed in addressing the issue, and then once you address the issue, then you can use something, you can use tips and ways of changing it, is to have the conversation. And it can be an uncomfortable conversation, but have it and realize that it's not, as Amy pointed out earlier, it's not something that we're saying men should be put down so women can be raised up. It is a combination of male and female voices, of that gender diversity to help us move forward. And if this pandemic has taught us anything, it's definitely that we do have to share things, we have to balance, and we have to listen to people around us. And we have to have an empathetic ear to have those conversations and put our bias away and consider what other people are saying to us. That's from my point of view. It is a long road, but if you don't start the conversation, uncomfortable or not, we won't get anywhere. Anything else there for us, Bill?
Can I just add something quickly to that, Eimear? I think a really key thing that we have talked about, but that is fascinating and uncomfortable, is just learning a little bit more about unconscious bias. You know, that's something that you can do from the safety of your desk and your laptop without anyone seeing you trying. And just as Bill said, it can be quite uncomfortable to realize suddenly your own biases when you can be completely convinced that you don't have any. So I think we have articles posted in the LinkedIn group where we can post more there as helpful references to start that work.
Yep, for sure, Amy. Conscious bias really is probably the first step on the path. Okay, so Kim, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say that, you know, I agree that it is a very difficult conversation, but once the conversation starts flowing, it does become easier, not only for you to recognize your own bias, but to share that with other people so that, again, that people that don't think that bias is there, and it's not necessarily bias just between women and men. There are other biases that we all need to recognize, especially being in a global community as we are. I will say that one thing that will happen is, yes, come to the Women in Cotton LinkedIn group. Our group, this whole group is growing very, very fast. Since we're going to be growing and splitting into several chunks and change, we're always looking for additional women and men who would like to participate more. And if I was trying to say that it's a really fun and energetic group. We're passionate about the mission, not only about bringing a better future to women, but to a better future for our whole industry.
Yeah, good point, Kim. And just one thing I will say about that, and what we have to be really careful of, is that this industry is multinational. There are cultural differences between different countries, different businesses. There are small businesses, there are large businesses. So it's not a one size fits all. You have to find the space that's comfortable to work in for your own business and for your own community. So what we're espousing here might not fit everybody, but there's definitely the conversation to be had that we know that you will benefit from. And as we continue with the regional chats for change, maybe we can be understanding more about those cultural differences and finding ways to support women and men in their own cultural way without creating any offense, and still being able to engender change for the better of everybody. Okay. Well, if there are no further comments or questions and answers, we should probably finish this session. I can't believe we're only like 9 minutes over time. Usually our chats for change go at least half an hour over. So again, I'd like to thank the panel for their time and their passion and commitment to this initiative. We look forward to, once we've had our AGM sometime in November, getting back online and talking to the cotton community about what we're going to do next. We've also become, just as recently as 2 weeks ago, we now have representation on the ICAC, one of the ICAC private advisory committees. So Women in Cotton has grown quickly. We have a good profile, and yeah, we're here to create good, positive change for everyone. So thank you all for your participation. Thank you to the audience for staying with us. We had over 172 tonight, this morning, wherever you are. And we really appreciate your support. So please continue, use our hashtags, use our hyperlink on our e-signature, and stay with Women in Cotton, because we support women in cotton. Thank you.